At 3:42 p.m., just 56 minutes after Japan is rocked by one of the top 5 earthquakes in recorded history, the tsunami wave approaches Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant. Inside are 3 active nuclear reactors. Diesel generators are pumping water around the reactors to cool the nuclear fuel rods. But these generators must stay dry. In Tokyo, one man is watching the unfolding disaster with increasing alarm. Nuclear engineer Mitsuhiko Tanaka helped design the Fukushima plant.
As soon as I put on the television, I learned that it was offshore of Fukushima. That was the epicenter. And then a tsunami warning followed. I felt that this was going to be terrible.
The plant is protected by seawalls 18 feet high. But they are no match for the 45-foot wave. Filmed just after the wave has hit, this astonishing video shows the damage. Swamped by the wave, the diesel generators are destroyed.
There's something very important that has to happen after an automatic shutdown, and that is to immediately cool the reactor.
Now, there is just one backup cooling system left: battery-operated pumps. But they only have an 8-hour charge, and the clock is ticking. While Fukushima edges toward nuclear meltdown, across Japan's east coast, people are fighting for their lives. At its highest measured point, the tsunami reached 124 feet above sea level.
It broke my heart to see some of the areas that I've walked. How many of those cities are gone? How many of the places have I been to that aren't there anymore? How many of my friends are missing their homes or not even alive anymore?
For many, helicopters offer the only escape route from their island prisons.
ヘリコプターの音がしたんですね。ヘリですからライトつけながら。
We heard the noise of a helicopter in the sky. It had a searchlight and hovered around the roof. Then a rescue worker came off the helicopter and told us, "We're going to rescue one by one."
するんですけども。
Brian Barnes returns to Otsuchi to discover a scene of utter devastation.
It was like nothing that you could even imagine. You know, I don't even think Hollywood couldn't even create something like this, I don't think. I think there was about 18,000 people that lived there. And at this point, there's not enough people living to take care of their dead. They've lost more than half the town. So it was pretty much hell on earth.
But Japan's nightmare is about to get even worse. At Fukushima nuclear plant, the battery-operated cooling pumps run out of power. And then, seismic event turns into nuclear catastrophe. An explosion blows the roof off Reactor Building 1. Two days later, another explosion hits Reactor Building 3. With all automatic systems disabled, the authorities have to make a terrifying decision. They must send men into a radioactive disaster zone to manually cool the reactors. One of the chosen few is Tokyo fireman Yukio Takeyama.
When we got through the main gate at the Fukushima nuclear power plant, I think it was after 2300 hours on the 18th at night. My very first impression was that it was like a strangely silent haunted house.
感じでした。
This footage shows Yukio and the team as they move in toward the reactors in total darkness.
You couldn't smell anything or see anything dangerous. There was nothing that you could see. All we had in front of us was the collapsed nuclear power station, reactor number 3, right in front of us, which was billowing smoke. You felt this strange kind of fear.
Inside the plant, Yukio and 300 others work in shifts of 50, pouring seawater on the reactors, risking their lives to avert even greater catastrophe.
I was frightened. I don't know much about radiation, but I believed that being exposed to large amounts of it meant certain death. So fear is only natural, but counteracting that fear was a sense of duty that all of us feel.
The Fukushima radiation leak is eventually given the maximum nuclear disaster rating of 7. The same as Chernobyl. This is the biggest disaster to strike Japan since World War II. And it's an event that has affected the whole Pacific region. 11 hours after the earthquake, the tsunami had crossed the entire Pacific Ocean. Brushing past Hawaii, it traveled nearly 5,000 miles at an average speed of 450 miles per hour, eventually ripping ashore in Santa Cruz, California. If a tremor in Japan can cause this, it's an ominous warning of the seismic threat that lies under America's own coastline. As the true nightmare of Japan's earthquake and tsunami emerges, earthquake scientists race to calculate the implications of this disaster for the rest of the world.
It's been a remarkable time for big earthquakes. There was a magnitude 6.1 aftershock right beneath the city of Christchurch in New Zealand. That was a tremendously damaging event. It killed over 180 people. We had an earthquake off Chile, magnitude 8.8 just last year, and now this year, magnitude 9 off Japan.
In just over a year, 3 points on the Pacific Ring of Fire have exploded. There is one question on everyone's minds. Is the U.S. West Coast next?
One of the things we try and understand when an earthquake like this happens in some faraway place like Japan is what are the implications for us in the United States?
Over 25 million people live along the Pacific coast of North America. From Mexico in the south to Alaska in the north, the whole region is seismically active. One of the biggest danger zones is in California, where the Ring of Fire runs inland, straight down the San Andreas fault line. Professor Tom Jordan has simulated the effect of a major earthquake in this area.
This shows the San Andreas fault in Central California, and what you're going to look at here is a simulation of a magnitude 8 earthquake as it ruptures the northern part of the San Andreas, comes speeding down at 6,000 miles per hour. Essentially, Los Angeles is a big bowl of jelly that shakes. This, of course, is not the kind of earthquake you'd want to be in.
But further north, America faces an even greater danger.
As many people now understand, there is a fault very similar to the one that broke in Japan off the northwestern coastline of Oregon, Washington, Northern California, and British Columbia.
Lurking just 50 miles off the coast, is an active seismic zone known as the Cascadia fault line. On this fault line, oceanic crust is diving under continental North America. And here too, the rock is under massive pressure. If it reaches breaking point, the Pacific Northwest could face a similar catastrophe. A terrifying earthquake, triggering a huge tsunami that would hit the west coast of America in just 25 minutes.
An event like this, which is right offshore, gives very little warning time to the people that live onshore.
The cities of Vancouver and Seattle are right in the firing line.
We always tell people, if you feel a big earthquake near the ocean, get to higher ground, because there's really not time for tsunami warning systems to kick in, and they sort of have to self-evacuate.
Countries all around the Ring of Fire must learn from the disaster in Japan by building stronger sea defenses and learning how to predict earthquakes.
We don't know how to tell you, hey, next week, get out of town, there's going to be a big earthquake. We are working on that problem very hard, but earthquakes turn out to be very difficult to predict.
Nowhere is this problem greater than in Tokyo, as hundreds of aftershocks rattle an already shaken nation.
I was actually a little shocked about the earthquakes that came after the big one. I guess that would be the one area where I really wasn't prepared, because from the time it happened that Friday to the time I left around Tuesday of the next week, they happened constantly. I would say almost every hour or so.
Tom Jordan has analyzed the aftershocks.
We're going to look at the sequence of earthquakes that occurred during this incredible week. That green dot is a foreshock that occurred 50 hours before the main shock. You can see the main shock in red, and then all of the aftershocks that occurred for the following week.
In the month after the big earthquake, 3 powerful magnitude 7 aftershocks have rocked Japan.
As terrible as this earthquake has been, we haven't seen the end of it. Aftershocks that are occurring in Japan are going to continue for months and years into the future. And one of the big concerns we have is, where will those aftershocks be? The city of Tokyo, the world's largest city, sits on the edge of the current aftershock zone. So we have to be very concerned about the seismic risk to Tokyo. This sequence isn't over.